Welcome to a special edition of Trade and Tariff Tuesdays. Avalara's weekly webinar series is back to unpack the latest developments in trade compliance. While we typically host these sessions on Tuesdays, yesterday's news was too important to wait, so we're here today to break it all down with you. My name is Regina, and I'll be your host. Before we dive in, we have just a couple of housekeeping items. First, a friendly reminder that Avalara cannot provide legal or tax advice. On your screen is our safe harbor policy. Please take a moment to review. We are recording today's event, and you'll receive the recording later today. The console you're looking at can be customized. Feel free to move or resize the windows. The additional resources section contains a lot of great resources related to today's webinar, including the slide deck. There are several ways to engage with the presenters and attendees. First, if you have any questions, please submit them using the Ask a Question box. We'll save time at the end for Q&A, and you may also submit your troubleshooting questions in that box. Second, you can join our attendee group chat. Click the icon at the bottom of your screen with 2 chat bubbles. The chat will then appear. We encourage you to introduce yourself, network, and discuss today's topic. Third, you can react to the presentation by clicking on the emoji icon and reacting. Last, a reminder that today's webinar is designed to be quick. We're scheduled for 30 minutes and interactive, so it's not eligible for CPE credit. Let's meet today's presenters. We're joined by 3 members of the Avalara team: Craig Reed, General Manager, Cross-Border; Shane Bogdan, Director of Sales, Cross-Border; and Patrick Frith, Senior Director of Growth, Cross-Border. In addition, we have George Francis, Senior Director, Global Marketplace at Avalara, and he'll be here answering questions in the chat. That's all I have for housekeeping, so I am passing it over to Craig.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to our special edition of Tariff Tuesdays on Thursday. I'm personally really excited about this one. Obviously, a lot of news and stuff to talk about. One of the ironies is we were actually in Toronto, Canada on March 4th when the first round of tariffs were announced on China, Canada, and Mexico and went into effect, pardon me. And we're here, Patrick and I are here in Amsterdam, the EU, the day that the EU tariffs are announced. So I don't know if Trump's following us around or not, guys, but there you have it. So we are going to try to make this a little more interactive. In the past, we usually go through a bunch of content, slides, etc. We're going to do some of that. We're going to review some of where we've been, and especially, obviously, where we landed with Liberation Day and the new tariffs. But we're just going to chat about it, and we've got some impressions. Patrick and I are getting a lot of feedback here at the trade show, so I think it'll be a great discussion, guys. Look forward to chatting about it.
Yeah, absolutely, Craig, and it's great to have you and Patrick back. As you guys know, I manned it on Tuesday, and we appreciate all the new registrants and attendees that are on here today. So I'm just going to go through a quick preamble. If this is now our 8th session that we've been hosting this webinar, obviously this is our special edition one here, but just a little bit of a background, because our goal as part of these webinars has really been able to keep our partners, clients, et cetera, and market informed of what's happening. Everything is happening so quickly. We're trying to keep up to speed and keep our clients, et cetera, up to speed here. So why the whiplash? When did this all start? This really started back in January 31st. And what this was all aimed at curbing fentanyl and illegal migration. Throughout that time frame, there have been numerous announcements, numerous speculation, tariffs imposed on China, Canada, Mexico, things paused, et cetera. We'll go into that in a minute, but just so you know, again, we're keeping up with these changes. We have a slew of resources readily available across blogs, webinars, recordings, white papers, on everything that's happened the past 8 weeks. All of these are included here just so you can keep up to speed. But if you joined me on Tuesday, this is where we had landed. This was Tuesday before yesterday, Liberation Day. This was the current state of trade at that moment. So China, there was a 10% tariff on China, which then was increased to 20%. Canada, there was 25% tariffs on all goods that were not qualified for USMCA. Ontario had previously done reciprocals on electricity, which had then been paused. And then Canada had general reciprocals on US goods coming into Canada. So over about 4 weeks or so, they put $60 billion of reciprocals on US-based goods going into Canada. Mexico, very similar to what the tariffs were for Canada, 25% on goods coming from Mexico that do not qualify under USMCA. For perspective on Canada and Mexico, Canada, 30% of goods into the US qualify for USMCA based upon some of the current stats. Mexico, 50% of the goods coming in the US qualify for USMCA. The other things that were still in play and that were expected to go live on Tuesday were there was a 25% on steel and aluminum that went into effect on March 12th. There was the 25% that was set to go into effect on automobiles on April 2nd. And then there was all the speculation and confusion around what was actually going to happen on April 2nd, as well as the Venezuela oil tariff that was also announced. So that was everything, that I really kind of synthesized on our Tuesday session and where we left off on that cliffhanger. Then obviously yesterday hits, and now let's take us where we currently are today.
So thanks, Shane. 4 p.m. Eastern yesterday, 10 p.m. Central European time. We stayed up to watch it. The Rose Garden event took place, Liberation Day, and I think we were all taken back with what happened. Extraordinary actions taken by the administration, and you can pretty much see here we've boiled down what was communicated yesterday. What was in the executive orders. We've boiled it down into something, into one slide, which you can see now on your screen. And we're going to spend some time talking around this slide and the impacts that it's going to have on exporters, importers in the US, as well as around the world. I think on the left side of the table here, you'll remember from yesterday from the events in the Rose Garden, the tariffs charged to the US are in the first column alongside the countries. And then in yellow, you see the reciprocal tariff. So let's take a step back. Let's look at that first column. This is the number which the US believes is the impact that the US is receiving in countries around the world. And this is not just tariffs, this is currency manipulation and trade barriers, which may be in place. And then quite simply, that number's been halved and that has become the discounted reciprocal tariffs. Important to note, the effective date here is the 9th of April. And Shane, Craig, doesn't give many people much time to react. This is a few days away.
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, I think everyone, and especially if anyone's tracking the markets, I think everyone was caught off guard on the size of the tariffs on some of the major countries. Really quite a bit more than expected. I think, that the general sentiment was that it would be a baseline tariff, maybe across the board for all countries. We certainly got that, didn't we, guys? We got a minimum baseline tariff of 10% on all imports for all countries. And that takes effect on the 5th, right? That takes effect on Saturday, but these additional tariffs go in on the 9th, right, guys?
Yeah, yep. That's correct. Yeah, it's that baseline across all markets on the 10th. And then on the 9th is the additional ones across those pieces here. And the one thing that stood out to me too, because again, this is now our 8th webinar here. And every week, if you're a frequent follower of ours, we've been asking a question of, what are you doing to prepare for these sort of things? And every week we continue to see the bar rise in terms of, I don't know yet. And I think a lot of businesses out there were really in that sentiment of, I don't know yet, because they were waiting for something concrete to actually be announced. It was, we'd have swings on this stuff every 48 hours. Well, now this is pretty concrete in terms of what's going to happen on this front. And I look at this because, there had also been a lot of things on earnings calls being announced of manufacturers that are manufacturing a majority of their goods in China, and them kind of trying to figure out, well, where should we start sourcing these goods? What other countries should we start sourcing? Well, ones that are key on here, such as Vietnam, Taiwan, Bangladesh, et cetera, especially in the apparel and fashion space, their tariff rates are extremely high. So even if you were thinking about moving out of China into some of these other markets, Bangladesh is at a 37% tariff rate, Vietnam 46%, India 26%. So this is really deterring against non-US sourcing based upon what came out yesterday.
Yeah, that's right. And just for everyone's edification, obviously we couldn't cover every single country here. We tried to hit the high points. The full chart, there's a link to the full chart that I believe they can click the link, right, guys, and get to the full chart. But we do have that information available for you. But yeah, the thing that really strikes me, guys, is and especially, and maybe Patrick, you can relay some of the things that we're hearing here. But if you're a manufacturer, you're importing. I'm not sure what you do here, because this is maybe, and this is my view, and again, folks, this is just us talking fireside chat kind of thing here. But this is an initial, I guess, volley that they're putting these tariffs out, and I think it's going to depend in large part on how countries respond on what happens next. So if you're a supply chain executive, or you're an importer or an exporter, you don't have a lot of certainty on what could happen next, because you could move away from China, for example, as a supplier, and move towards, let's say, South Korea, that's at 25%, or name your country that's lower, but you don't know that that's going to last, right? You don't know that couldn't turn around next week and become flip-flop. So I think it's going to continue to create a lot of paralysis in the market, and cause the executives teams to really have to think long and hard about how they make their next move, right, guys?
Yeah, we were just 1 hour ago, we were speaking to an attendee here at the event, and 5 shipping from the EU into the US, contracts signed, $5 million worth of equipment, hasn't left yet, but is set to. Nowhere in that contract were they anticipating the 20%, the reciprocal tariff from the EU there into the US. So on a $5 million order, that's $1 million, and that's something that can't be ignored. That's a big sum of money, which is owed to the government as of the 9th, and will have to be settled. Will have to be paid. So there's going to be a lot of supply chain issues, as companies react to this change in a short period of time. So we can expect, I imagine we can expect a lot of questions, and maybe a degree of confusion as well as to impact.
Yeah,
definitely. And I'll tell you, Patrick did a presentation just to the audience here at the supply chain event in Amsterdam, and I can tell you it was one of the most boisterous of the presentations I've seen. Just so many questions and so much confusion on what happens. I think maybe we've talked about this in the past, guys, but one of the points of confusion, I see another question in the Q&A actually, is point of origin versus country of origin. We talked a lot about that country of origin is going to be so key, and I think there's going to be a stampede of companies looking to get their products certified with country of origin, so that depending on what it is, if it's something that they want to have, so that they get preferential treatment. That's another sort of impact of this is, hey, what's my country of origin? And remember, folks, that country of origin, every country has its definition of it. In general, it's like where most of the value of the good was added, but you have to prove that, number one. And number two, point of origin doesn't matter. So if you transship something through through the UK, say, because it's lower tariff, it doesn't matter. If it's made in China, it's made in China. It's going to attract China tariffs. So that's important to keep in mind.
There's a question here, actually, I'm glancing through as you're speaking, Craig, from Madeline. goods imported from China, and then they're redistributed from the UK. Some, I guess, will end up being sold to the US consumers. That's made in China. So that is subject now to the new China tariff that you see. We'll speak a little bit about de minimis shortly, but that's now regardless of where it came from. It's coming from the UK in this example, from Madeline, but it's subject now to made in China, 34%. And Shane, do you want to?
Yeah, I was just going to say.
Yeah, we published.
Yeah, I was just going to say. Well, let me just on the 34% here, the asterisks on China. This is the reciprocal tariff. I know there had been confusion out there yesterday in relation to the 20% that's currently on the China prior to yesterday. It's actually stackable. This number is now 54% from a total perspective for China. So this number 34% is the additional reciprocal on top of the previous 301s of 20% that were added on here. So China is now over 50% tariff rate on those pieces. So again, yeah, it really goes back to that country of origin. And kind of back to my statement before in terms of now where is sourcing going to come from? If you're looking at these other nations as well, and you were thinking about Vietnam, well, 54% versus China, now Vietnam is now 46%. This is really, really pushing and deterring against non-US sourcing. Really, the way these rules are set up is really trying to make things manufacturing all within the United States, within all components.
Yeah.
So I think it may be good to go to the other piece of information here, and I'm going to
Hey Shane, before we leave that, I just wanted to. One thing I think that we maybe need to call out is, this is all before any of the countries, and I think, I've read this morning, the EU, the UK, China has some rumblings. This is before reciprocal tariffs go into effect. Remember, Shane said that that Canada has implemented tariffs on 60% of goods coming, or pardon me, 60 billion worth of goods coming from the US. Nobody else has done anything yet. So this is going to have knock-on effects, right? So China's going to respond, I would think. The EU is going to respond. The UK is going to respond. So what's the response to the response, right? And we all know that the current administration might want to have the last word on it and might want to have control of it. So who's to know where this ends, whether it goes down or up or somewhere in between? And the other point I'll make is, and for those of you who haven't been on past presentations, I'm Canadian. So this hits me both personally and professionally. But I know in Canada, there's been a lot of talk about, there's Canada. You'll notice Canada and Mexico aren't on here. They haven't been hit with any of these new tariffs, and the USMCA, the free trade agreement, is still in effect. So, it remains to be seen whether these can be negotiated down. And one of the pieces of news coming from Canada is that potentially Canada could drop down to 12% non-USMCA, and that they may loosen the regulations for USMCA. But the point is that, again, we don't know where this is all going to land. So anyway, stay tuned for more Tariff Tuesdays, I guess, guys.
Yeah, and Craig, I also talked about too on Tuesday of, outside of what we've been seeing in terms of some of these other nations even though they're putting counter tariffs on US goods, there is now a sentiment that's happening right now of nationalism within these other countries, such as Canada, of buy Canadian goods. So even though there's tariffs that are being imposed, there is now a piece where they are pulling US goods off shelves. So I would assume that we'll probably see something similar to this hit other countries as well in terms of what they're doing.
Yeah, and having been in the EU now, I'll tell you that it really hasn't. I think it's really now just hitting the radar screen in a major way. Obviously, in Canada and Mexico and the US, it's been pretty big news. But in the EU and the UK, I think it's been less so. I don't think it's really hit home for a lot of people yet, but it's certainly going to. Worldwide, obviously, look at every country in the world is going to be impacted by this. Even the island with penguins, right?
Yeah, the Herd Island. Yeah, yeah. So. You're absolutely right, and I see questions here from people. When will there be more news on tariffs? We can expect.
There's only one man in the world that knows the answer to that.
Yeah, but right now, I read just before we came on air that the UK government are meeting to decide a list of products which will be included in the response. So I can only imagine there are governments around the world who are measuring their responses, assessing them.
And that's really important, isn't it, Patrick? Because keep in mind, folks. And actually, Patrick, you raised this point when you gave your presentation earlier. But somebody could just. This is pretty easy, right? Like, okay, it's European Union 20%. Like, it doesn't take a lot of effort to figure that out. However, all of the reciprocal tariffs are, well, certainly have been, are likely to be very, very targeted to certain goods. And how do you know which goods? The HS code. So HS codes become extremely important in understanding what your ultimate tariff impact is going to be.
Yeah. Am I 20%? Am I 25%? Am I 40%? It's all going to be determined by HS codes.
Do I qualify for USMCA? Do I not? Those are all big questions for companies to answer. I know, Shane, you want to flip to the other big.
Well, yeah, because I think, another shoe had dropped last night, even after the Rose Garden piece, which is the end of de minimis exceptions. And again, for the folks that have been following us since the beginning here, back on February 3rd, de minimis from China was revoked. And again, de minimis, just so everybody really is aware here, it's allows one shipment of goods per person per day, valued at under $800 to be exempt from duty. Okay, perspective across the board here in 2024. There was 1.34 billion shipments of good into the U.S. that qualified as de minimis. In 2015, it was only 125 million and has grown 10x within 9 years. And, this has been a bipartisan question on the board for, I would say, the past 2 years within both presidents, both Biden and now Trump, trying to figure out how to tackle this piece, because this is where they really see the whole fentanyl coming into play here, of the amount of influx of goods coming in small parcels, increasing on the safety concerns. Well, again, on February 3rd, de minimis was revoked for China. On February 7th, it was reinstated just because they didn't understand how to process this volume of goods coming in under $800. And it was only a matter of time before this was going to be revoked again. And Trump even said that we will revoke this once adequate systems are in place. So even outside of the Rose Garden conference yesterday, I think this hit around 8 o'clock or so at night, this came out specifically that duty-free de minimis treatment of goods from China or Hong Kong under $800 and postal goods under $800 are now going to receive, if it's under a postal, 30% of the value of the good or 25% of the item. And then carriers are now having to ensure that they're reporting shipments, proper tariff codes, content information, international bonds, and remit duties to the CBP. So again, this is as critical as the component of the tariff piece here. And this was only a matter of time that this was going to happen. Now, this is for China and Hong Kong only. They're thinking about 90 days re-examining this. We foresee that this potentially also happening to other countries that are importing to the U.S. as well. But if you've heard the theme of us over the past 8 weeks, the one question that we've received of, well, how do we prepare? How do we prepare? Well, our statement is really product descriptions, understand your country of origin, your pricing strategy, and most importantly here that you now will see as part of these goods coming in, HS classifications are key here. And in order to get the proper HS classification, you need all of those 30 things I mentioned. The product descriptions, country of origin, pricing strategy, in order to get that 10-digit HS classification.
Yeah, and potentially also, what the product's being used for. But anyway, to your point, Shane, the key is what is your HS code? Guys, I can't help but think, what's the impact going to be on the ports, on the airports, on, is CBP really going to be able to put through this kind of volume that's now getting scrutiny? I think it's going to cause a lot of chaos at the ports personally, but who knows? It remains to be seen. Maybe they will be able to handle it, but add on top of that all the stuff going on with Doge and who knows? Like it's going to be interesting to see what happens with removal of de minimis. I think it's actually equally as big news in the world of cross-border trade as the tariffs are.
Yeah,
it's millions of shipments every single day, made in China or Hong Kong, entering the US under the threshold at the moment. On May the 2nd, that threshold is 0. So anything made in China, made in Hong Kong, coming in from wherever in the world, could be coming from South Africa, could be coming from Australia, but its origin is China, then it's 0, and it's subject now to the 54%.
54%. Yeah, so it's a double whammy. Like, I mean, I got to believe that there's going to be a reaction from China. I mean, this is a pretty heavy hit. Removing, you think about the companies like Shein and Temu, Alibaba, all those companies that are shipping this type of good, it's going to have a pretty big impact, guys.
Yeah, and we're a month away from it happening. So, a $10 purchase made in China on the 3rd of May will be $15.40.
Yeah, and I do believe that this is, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, or it's going to be 0 because the consumer's not going to order that good, right? So
exactly.
I don't know. Again, we're fireside chatting here, and obviously this is not official Avalara policy or position, but I've got to believe that these policies are going to have a pretty big impact on both the supply side and the demand side, because if you're a consumer and you're waiting to buy, well, you're not going to buy that $50 tchotchke probably, because it's not going to be a $50 tchotchke anymore. A, and B, major purchases are going to be put off because you don't know if these tariffs are going to continue, similar to an importer not knowing whether or not they should move their supply chain around because they don't know if these policies are going to be stable. And I think that that's the biggest issue facing the market right now is stability and durability of these policies. If these policies are durable, you can start to plan. But I think what's been happening, and when we talked about the whiplash, and we call it whiplash for a reason, because that durability of policy has not been there to date. I mean, maybe now it will be, but that has yet to be proven. So I think that paralyzes the market effectively.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a policy change. Countries make policy changes all the time, and it's every sovereign country's right to have these policies, put them in place, and we wait to see what other sovereign countries will do to react. But I'll tell you one thing, guys: do nothing is not going to happen. Okay, because countries will react. They have to protect their own citizens, their own their nation, and they will do what they need to do. So
I think countries are going to react, but I also think more importantly that businesses now have to be proactive in terms of what's happening. So I do hope that next time we ask that question of what is your plan moving forward based on these changes, we start seeing that do nothing, start to move over into some strategic pieces here. I do know we only have 2 minutes left, so we do just want to let everybody know here, these are all areas that we can help with. Avalara was born on trying to make things easy, driving compliance across transactions. We can help in terms of calculating all those duties and taxes, everything that's new. Our content team has been up all night making sure that they're getting the most appropriate information, waiting for the new federal registrar to start hitting. Tariff code classifications, this is exactly what we're talking about now. As crucial as it is for these goods coming in from China, we foresee that this being with all goods coming into the US, having the appropriate HS classification on those goods. And we provide a portfolio of solutions from self-serve tools that you could easily look up things. We have a content team of 250 individuals that will actually take your catalog and go through there as well, while providing GRIs on top of those. So we are here to help. I'm going to skip through again just because we're 1 minute away. The poll question here, would you like to talk to us? I would, as you can kind of allude to, we're getting a lot of inbound inquiries. We're even seeing this come from the question, the Q&A piece. The easiest way to get a hold of us currently right now and talk about these things is select a yes. This will go to my team specifically, and we will reach out to you as soon as possible. Again, everything in relation to HS classifications, questions that you have, but this is the most streamlined way to get a response from us, and we absolutely want to help out here with all of this confusion in the market.
Yeah, there's so many questions and so many questions to answer. And, like you said, our team's been on top of it. We're going to make sure that everything's accurate and everything's current. And we'll keep pace with the changes. And we have a team here ready to help you out. So, as Shane said, it's a little busy right now. So if you want to try and get a hold of us, that's the best way. Guys, any last comments before we sign off here?
Yeah, well, I think the slides that we've just shown, I think 1 week from now are going to be out of date because we can expect reaction. But at the end of the day, Avalara, we respect sovereign nations changing policy. It's our job to keep up with those changes, whatever they may be, and provide that updated information in a timely fashion to our customers. It's our duty to do that.
Yeah. And I'd be remiss not to call out all of these resources that we've been putting together over the past 8 weeks. These are up to date as quickly as humanly possible. I have to shout out to Gail Cole, who's helped putting all of these blog pieces, news informations. We're up all at night taking pictures of TVs as new information is hitting. I'm sure everybody was doing that yesterday when Trump was holding up the billboard. But listen, we have teams that are constantly on this stuff. So if you need information on what's happening, we have links here. We'll make sure that you share it out.
Yeah, I think we're sharing this presentation with any of the attendees today. So if you, I think the links aren't live, maybe. So don't worry.
Yes,
the
that's
presentation. Correct. Yeah. So anyway, we'll turn it back over to you, Regina, and we'll sign off. See everyone maybe next Tuesday, and we'll have, I'm sure, more to talk about.
Yep.
All right. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you to our presenters. Quick reminder as we close out, you'll receive the post-event email later today with a link back to this console where you can access the recording, slide deck, and additional resources. And in that, you'll find the links. We hope you can join us again next week as we continue our weekly webinar series. That post-event email will have instructions on how to register for upcoming sessions. Thanks for joining us. This concludes today's webinar.